What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Trade to Black, presented by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Hope everybody had a great weekend as we get things off. Brand new week. I know everybody's all looking online closely to see if we get any kind of news regarding President Trump. Like you said last week, we should have a definitive answer in the next few weeks. So I know a lot of people are chattering online here today, wondering when an announcement will be made. But coming up, we're going to have Tim Seymour from CNBC's Fast Money on. He was on CNBC last week and described rescheduling cannabis would be a game changer. So we want to find out what his approach is right now in this industry and really what's the best way to manage this ETF and cannabis stocks right now, because I know a lot of you had a lot of questions pertaining to this as well. Margaret Brody, CEO of Rubicon Organics, come on after that to talk about their latest earnings. Another great story out of Canada. And then finally, Michael Bronstein will come on from Attached to give us a highlight and update at a PA. And more importantly, the deadline dates this week in Texas regarding hemp. All eyes on Texas in addition to Washington. So lots going on. Let's welcome in AV here on a Monday.
How's it going?
402. And just waiting for Mr. Seymour to come on. Hopefully, I think he's got the link. Sent it to him earlier.
Yeah, he responded.
What did we finish? I think we had a little bit of a rally going into the close. Did we not?
495 was the close on MSOS.
Okay.
It was a nice green day across the tape.
Yep.
By the way, Wolf said tomorrow, and he was completely joking.
Yeah.
For those in the chat that thought he was being serious, that was a completely facetious tweet. Jason is recovering from hip surgery, so I'm assuming he's in need of a little bit of entertainment at home.
Is he that old now? What is he? Is he 70s? Is he 75?
No, he had I think he had an injury. But he's on the mend. But yeah, I mean, I would love for it to be tomorrow, but I mean, I'm highly skeptical on that materializing.
Deep blow at the hip, playing some pickleball down in Florida?
I don't know that many details. Pickleball's not a real sport anyway. So
exactly.
Not sure if that would have been the case.
VFF, it's still ripping. I didn't see it. How did it perform today? Ron?
It's up. I mean, I've owned it since $1.12 with the announcement on the vegetable spinoff, which was really well. Needed to digest a little bit. Had some volatility. But
how has this thing moved in the last little bit?
Yep.
Wow.
She's moving nicely. Granted, also keep in mind that the ETF is MSOS. The ETF is actually buying Village Farms now, so there's some more buy pressure.
Yeah, and
in there, which is kind of contributed. You can track Dan starting to buy Village Farms and the price appreciation and the shares starting to get a little bit more aggressive as he's been buying the name.
I looked at some of their positioning of their percentage of holdings last week, and Village Farms is changing. It was very small, I think, about a week and a half ago. I'm not sure if that's changed. I'd have to look at it. Jungle Java has been incredible at outlining that stuff every single day. But 17 or 18 days inflows consecutively now for MSOs. I think it was 18 she had reported, but anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody that's out there, but looks like we got some options expiry that happened on Friday. I know we did our live stream at 11 a.m., but everyone was all concerned with basically the close. But what I've learned, the stuff that's going out of Toronto, it's Scotia National Bank and CIBC. They're checking to see what's going on if there's buying that takes place after 2 o'clock Eastern time, or trading hours, if you want to say. And when there's no trading that takes place, a lot of these banks can't hold stocks overnight. So that's when you see a dump going into the close. And that was exactly the case as to what happened going into the close on Friday. But looks like we had a decent rebound here today, and be curious to see how this will perform heading into this week. But that's what we're trying to dig in and find out more with Mr. Seymour. So I'm going to send him a quick text to see where he is.
Yeah.
See if it's coming on.
Judging by Tim would be able to give good color on the internals of the market. Golf is not a real sport. Yeah, you have no idea what you're talking about.
What?
I don't know. Some clowns in the chat that probably play pickleball.
Golf is a real sport.
Tim's got a lot of insight into what's going on in the market internals and volumes and how all that stuff is going. Yeah, Tilray actually did well today too. Tilray was up, I think, 10.5% going into the close.
Yeah, rescheduling. The rumors continue to circulate. New York Post actually posted a story on, was it Sunday morning?
And Michael, I was actually going to answer your comment until you about the lawsuit, until that smartass comment. So I'm just going to keep my opinion on the Verano lawsuit now to myself. It's a good way to put your foot in your mouth.
What do you do? AV looks like, oh, come on, Michael. But yeah, New York Post actually, they basically report I think that a lot of people that follow this space already know, and that's the whole idea of like President Trump inching closer with an actual decision towards rescheduling. But I think from a pure optics standpoint and the amount of tension that this industry has generated, there's some feelers out there, but it's definitely getting its day in the sun as far as attention rate now. When you factor in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post within a 7-day window, both reported on the rescheduling of cannabis. And quite honestly, for years when we couldn't get a seat at the dinner table and this wasn't talked about, it's really good to see that this is happening in a 1 week span.
Yeah. And Michael, in all seriousness, I think the number on the lawsuit is crazy. 800 million. I don't think it ever comes anywhere close to that. I'm not really too familiar about like the true intricacies of the lawsuit, but from what I've heard from people that I've spoken to, it'll probably get settled at some point in time. Number's not going to be anywhere near 800 million. If it does get settled, it's going to be way, way less than that, in orders of magnitude less than that 800 million headline number, we'll call it.
Yeah, and that's probably something that we should have brought up last week in our interview with George, but we're going to follow up with another probably interview with him potentially before the end of the month to find out more details on this. But there were some information that we did get. Anyways, we'll get into that later, but there was some info that we have prepped for an interview that we'll probably set up to follow up with George on this. But something we had missed last week, but we'll make sure that we get him back on again and bring a lot of this stuff up, because there's a few, including you, Michael, that have asked that same question. So,
yeah.
All right. Still waiting for Mr. Seymour. I've sent him a text. It's now 4:08, and I may have to actually pivot here on today's show and go right into our interview with Margaret Brody, but send him one last little note, and here is the link again. Please let me know ASAP. Sorry, everybody. All right.
Yeah. Any rumors whether Trump will do more than S3? I have zero confidence that there'll be anything more than S3 as in terms of like reschedule or descheduling. I just don't see it. I'd love to be wrong. Reading the tea leaves, I wouldn't think that they're going to deschedule cannabis under a Trump administration, unless he says, hey, we're going to reschedule. And then he instructs RFK Jr. at HHS to conduct more research into the actual potential negative side effects and negative effects of cannabis, really dive into the science, orders of magnitude more than what we've already done, and then uses that potentially as the basis to deschedule. But I think that descheduling is just too radical considering where we are right now over the last 50 some odd years.
Yeah. I think rescheduling gets in.
Banking's logical. Banking could get done. I think S3 catalyzes banking. Maybe not safe, but some other form of banking or uplisting or states 2.0. I think Schedule 3 is going to move things forward in terms of allowing politicians to actually talk about cannabis.
Yeah.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility that it does allow for greater things to happen on the back of it.
Yeah, I have heard too, people from Washington are open to the idea of getting people's take on descheduling and states 2.0. But how that all plays out, I have no idea. But one thing's for sure, we're going to get rescheduling, an announcement, yes or no, within these next few weeks. And I think that's the first step. And then once that's put into play, to your point, Anthony, that we will start to see people look at this from a different light. And I think it's going to be an approach, which is, okay, how does this look? What is wrong? What's right? And how do we make this states 2.0 act? Because, now you're talking about getting Congress involved. And when there's the executive branch and an executive order, obviously this is something President Trump can get done and get done right away. But when you start to get more thinking minds in the room, that's going to be delayed a lot more. But the key is, to your point, Anthony, is that these lawmakers have to start looking at this in a different light. And that's where the first step is when it comes to rescheduling. So that is hopefully going to be the case in these next few weeks. And then from there, the next step is about banking states 2.0. What that timeline is, 3 months and 4 days. Like, I have no idea. So Anthony, MJ Harold seems to think SAFE won't happen this year based on staffers, but it will happen. So
I'm almost positive his quote was 6 out of 10 or like a 60% chance. And I don't trust staffers, to be completely honest. I mean, with all due respect, I know the Marijuana Herald's getting a lot of press. They were quoted in Unusual Whales today. I know Anthony seems like he's doing some really good reporting. I'm not taking staffers at face value on any of this stuff moving forward. We've been there, done that before with staffers from certain politicians. We need something done administratively via the Trump administration for the executive branch to act. I'm taking very, very little heed as to what staffers are saying, but I hope he's right. I hope he's right because we'll all be better off for it.
Yeah. SAFE's at least 12 months away, writes Justin. I could see that more of a play leading right up to the last hour heading into midterm elections, which is what, a year from November?
A year from November would be midterms. Yep.
Yeah, I could see that being something realistic, a month to 6 weeks prior to that. But the big win seems crazy to think, but a lot of people that were online, saw some tweets. Who is the gentleman? Jim, is it Jim or John Morgan, saying he pleaded with President Biden back in the day to move on cannabis, but more or less just saying good for Donald Trump and President Trump to actually push forward. And really, if he does indeed what we think he's going to do, which is announce rescheduling, it's really this from the Democrats. And we look back at it and say, I don't care really who brings it across the finish line. It's just get across the line and we go from there.
Correct.
But that's the way everybody's probably thinking. But we're hesitant. We're very cautious because we've never been this far before, but we've gotten our hopes up many, many times before. Right?
Yeah.
I see it quiet.
I think we've been this far before. We've been this far before with SAFE. We've been this far before with rescheduling in the Biden administration. I mean, the new rule was sitting there ready to get signed, and then they announced the ALJ hearing. We've been pretty close as far as, let's say, hype and speculation go and expectations go around this before. This is just, you're actually seeing the president speak about it and give color to the issue. But yeah, we've been here before. This isn't anything new.
That's what I mean, but I've never heard someone actually say, a president say, we're going to have a decision within the next couple or a few weeks.
The Biden administration were using collateral that said they reclassified cannabis already during the process. Let's not forget that. Kamala was hosting people at the White House talking about rescheduling cannabis. Remember the Fat Joe meeting? Everybody thought the writing was on the wall, that rescheduling was going to get done. It was a slam dunk. We've been here before.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. All right, it's 4:15.
I think we've reached our statute of limitations on segment number 1.
All right, so I'm running around right now to get my okay. All good. Tim can't make it. So with that, let's now segue into segment number 2, which is the highlight of Rubicon Organics' latest earnings. So let's talk more about that and bring in their CEO, Margaret Brody. Yes, we were hoping to have Tim Seymour on, and I was getting some text message from you in the background saying, I'm okay. I can be patient. I can wait a bit, but I thank you. But all good. And why not? We got you on, right?
Absolutely. Look, hey, I'm not Tim Seymour, guys, but I'll do my darn best to keep you entertained. And I know he's got an interesting perspective. I'll give you mine on U.S. rescheduling. How's that?
Yeah, would love to hear it because, what do you think of this? This is, I think, great for not only the industry in the U.S., Canada, internationally, because if there is rescheduling, it's just, I think it just creates forward momentum for the global aspect of cannabis, right?
100%. 100%. Look, we have had a long, cold winter in the cannabis industry. In Canada, it started before the US, so it's been 3-4 years of an Arctic frost from investors. And I think this creates an opportunity to tell the story again about what the opportunity is in the US. And there's also a huge opportunity in Canada. So, we'll take any eyeballs back on the space that we can get. There have been operators just like in the US and Canada that have, bared down, been focused, gritty, built their businesses, clawed their way up through this. And I would say there's, less than 10 public companies in Canada you want to be paying attention to. Rubicon being on that list. And we've got a global opportunity in front of us, very different than the US opportunity. We're seeing countries around the world turn on, and Canada is the natural home of quality for that, given the regulatory system that's been set up. And we're seeing that in the results of a series of companies.
Yeah, what I find interesting too is the U.S. companies in the latest earnings have held their ground, which is nice to see. But also in Canada, we've seen some really good reports. We saw some news with Raj and High Tide. They bought a 51% stake in Remexian over in Germany. So all in all, it appears that, like you said, there's a smaller group of Canadian companies that are still around, but it looks like there is a thriving opportunity, which he was saying on Friday.
Yeah.
Do you maybe want to elaborate off of that and what you're seeing and hearing from your aspect too?
Well, I think there's a few dynamics happening. One is in Canada, if you could compete in Canada in the last few years, you are a lean, mean operating machine, and you have been operating in a highly competitive market, and you figured out your brand positioning and you stayed on shelf. We've had a whole bunch of companies pivot their brands off shelf and getting back on. Ontario, our largest market, reducing SKU count from over 5,000 to about 4,500 by the end of this year. Those are big stats and big numbers to change. Secondly, the amount of inbounds we're getting for product internationally is significant. Look, we're building our business in Canada right now. We've got a strategic expansion that you're going to see come online here. We purchased a facility down the road from us about an hour and a half. We're turning that on. It'll increase our production capacity 40%. Yeah. There are opportunities for Canadian operators that are very profitable opportunities.
That's great. Well, let's look at this, your latest quarter, and you're not lying. You posted record revenue and turned a profit, which isn't something you hear often in the space. You also advanced your, as you said, your expansion strategy, raised capital, and launched new products. So walk us through, I guess, the highlights, because take your pick. There's a lot here to pick and choose from. So good to see, and always nice to hear somebody say record profit when they're announcing their latest earnings.
Yeah, look, and we did that off the back of our existing facility. And I think that's what people sometimes can't understand. How did you do that? We're brand builders and product innovators, as well as delivering top shelf premium quality weed consistently in Canada. So that comes from new genetics, new news. We want to be leading the world in genetics. You know, in the US, you would have heard of strain hunters. You would have heard of Cookies, Alien Labs. We are the Canadian company looking to do the same. And so watch our name. I think genetics in 3 to 5 years will be able to be monetized on an international stage. Then there's the year-to-date revenue up 30% on the prior year on 24. And now it's time for us to invest a bit in our business for what's next. Moving on, adding a facility. We're just waiting on that license from Health Canada. Should have it here certainly before the end of the year. But you know, any CEO would tell you I want it yesterday, and that will really drive more output for us and premium output. And that's what we want. Well, look, we're not interested in playing in the mainstream value game of mids. We want to grow the best. We want to get better every day. And we want people to look towards our brands and recognize the quality that's in them.
Yeah. With the facility coming online, I know that it's, I think it's an increase in about 40% of your capacity, and waiting on the Health Canada license. When do you expect, or what are the expectations and timelines for that to actually start to contribute to revenue?
Great question. Yeah. You know, we were hoping honestly that we'd have the license by now. And Health Canada, you could see it in Tilray's results that were out and a few others. There has been a bit of a slowdown, and we're dealing with our regulators. So as fast as we can, but as slow as we must, I guess, is the is what happens. I don't believe that there's any impediments to us getting that license. So it's a matter of when and not if, in my view. But it's a regulator, so you will jump through the hoops, and that's important. We initially thought if we had the license for July 1st, it would be about $3 million in OPEX costs to us this year against our EBITDA. And then we said revenue in the first half of next year. Our revenue projection hasn't changed. We're going to get that revenue out in the first half. That's the plan. Barring unforeseen, pandemic, flood, blah, blah, blah. Look, we're on track and we're an experienced team. For us, this is the first step of showing that we can do this on repeat and grow this business. And we've done that step by step all the way along. We don't want to chase shiny balls and follow the latest fad. We want to build real brand and real credibility with both investors and our consumers.
So with that increased capacity, I'm assuming the strategy is that capacity is going to be utilized domestically within the provinces, or do you also have international plans as well?
We have international ambitions.
Catalog. Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
But it's hard to say what percentage in which facility it's going to come out of, because we're in what we call test and learn for 25. By the end of this year, my ambition is to have delivered to 3 or 4 different countries and different operators. We're learning who do we like to work with. You know, a lot of people are all about getting the product out now. We're satisfying our Canadian customers as a priority, and then saying, what's the right route to market to land a branded product for long-term sustainable growth and great traction. You know, I think I've said it here before. We don't sell hockey bags of weed. We sell a branded, beautiful product.
Yeah. Well, you're seeing, I think, in Germany, the growth, but we all know eventually, and Anthony, you would know this better than anyone too. It's just eventually when the consumer becomes more sophisticated, you got to have good product. And would you say that's kind of the first step for Germany right now? Yes, let's grow it first, but eventually, does the quality meet the demand right now? I guess in some ways.
Is that for me or Anthony? I don't know, Anthony. I think that a medical patient is very different than a rec patient. A medical patient is looking for consistency and a consistent strain and a consistent experience. But then there's this quasi medical patient who's really a rec patient through a script.
Yeah. So unlike you're 100% correct. Unlike the US and unlike Canada, Germany doesn't allow for those quasi, we'll call them tourist medical patients. You don't get to go into the doctor's office and say, hey, I want OG Kush, blah, blah, blah. They get kind of what they're given from a prescription perspective. They're not going in there and seeing a menu and being able to shop. I've always had the notion that Florida, it's the largest medical market in the country. I mean, it's a medical market it's a recreational market under the guise as a medical market. A lot of what's sold here is to recreational users, not true medicinal patients, unlike what they're doing in Germany. The consumer just doesn't have that optionality. Yeah.
Well, you always hear about the regulated market in Germany being cheaper than the illicit market. So I often ask the question, is the quality there? And if so, I assume it's not. And I would think if you fast forward 2, 3, 4 years, we saw it in Canada, you see it in the US, these low cost producers, it's a great selling story on from day one, but eventually in due time, the numbers don't lie. You got to build on quality. So do you think that same trend will take place? And is that the trend that's actually happening right now in Germany, Margaret?
I don't know if it's a trend happening right now. I'm not on the ground. I know there is a lot of, by a lot, I mean, there's more demand than there is supply, full stop. We're seeing countries turn on around the world that don't necessarily have a deep history of quality cannabis supply. But props to them because they're going to make an economic opportunity out of this because they have good growing environments. They're not necessarily a refined know-how premium opportunity. What you're hearing about some of the facilities in Europe is there are these great facilities built, but they can't find the know-how, the skills, the staff, et cetera, to grow them. So having that in your home base, it's like building a cannabis facility in the middle of the Arctic. If there's nobody that can work at it and wants to work there, there's nothing coming out of it, and there's certainly nothing good coming out of it.
That's a good point.
So I think you've got to remember that this is all about knowledge and caring and know-how all the way down the chain. That's how you produce a quality product. You can't just send one expert over to do a whole facility. We've seen that happen, and it fails time and time again. Thus, the opportunity.
Yeah.
With your emphasis on the Canadian market and obviously the focus on quality, how are you dealing with some of the challenges with SKU rationalization and commanding shelf space provincially right now in Canada?
Well, our customers in Canada know that we are dedicated to them and have been dedicated to them. I don't think that's true of everyone. We want to put our best foot forward with every single consumer experience. We are there to win, to support our customers, to support our retailers, and educate the bud tender. So last week in Toronto, one of the largest events in cannabis in Canada, the Kind Summer Fair. This year, they allowed consumers in. I wasn't there myself, so I didn't see it. But our team was able to talk to 2,500 to 3,000 consumers and bud tenders went through. So education is such a huge part of cannabis. And we're really excited about, some of our most recent crops. I'm going to get kicked for saying this by the team. But the last few crops that have come down, everything's been over 4% terpenes. So the story of cannabis is actually about experience. And we talk about experiences a lot and elevating them. Doesn't need to be a 30% THC to have an incredible weed experience.
Yeah. So is the consumer there? Is the consumer there nationwide in Canada as you've had legalization now for 8 years or going on 8 years now? I mean, we see that maturation in markets in the United States, but it usually takes shape as like a bell curve where the
Yeah.
market opens, it's demand, just give me high THC, whatever, I'll go buy. And then all of a sudden it starts to roll over and they're like, what's the terpene profile? What does this flower actually contain? There's no that emphasis on the high THC percentage is gone.
And the power of living
consumers most
soil.
part mature.
Yeah. So for us, it's the power of living soil, the natural sun, supplemented with light, and the genetics. So, there's always going to be people that walk into store and want highest THC, lowest price, as I said. But we've seen that really flatten out, in particular in the infused pre-roll space. I think that's a particular segment of the market. For the first time in Canada in the first half, we saw pre-rolls overtake flower. That's moving towards trust and convenience in a consumer. I think we're also going to see that with the all-in-one segment, where all-in-one and vape become more like 50-50. Look, I think not all consumers are ever going to be completely educated. I mean, if you think about wine, you have people that understand the hint of peach note and blah, blah, blah. You're not always going to get that in everyone, and that's okay. We're not looking to satisfy everyone. We're looking to satisfy the consumer looking for who loves it and is in for that beautiful premium experience.
Yeah.
So there are other companies that are going to do a great job at satisfying other things. What we're going to do is bring unbelievable flavor forward genetics. And we just launched something called Lemon Loops. And I was just hearing a report.
Lemon Loops. Who came up with that idea?
Okay. BC Organic Lemon Loops. And you walk the facility and the smell is incredible. And I think, this genetics story and the way each of the different terpenes hits everybody's body differently, it's something to be excited about, whether you're new in your weed journey. Look, if I'm new into anything, I'm probably like, even if I'm a beginner, I'd still like the top shelf, right?
Yeah.
I suspect you two are the same. And there's a whole bunch of people out there that are going to pick that joint up, and they may be new consumers, but they're going to smell the lemon on it. And they're going to think this is cool.
Smells a huge part in people judging the quality of flower. Most people just inhale it right when you open it. At least that's one of my biggest starters.
Can we smell that lemon next month if we come out?
Yeah, please do. You're going to smell everything. I mean, some of my favorite strains are some of the smelliest, and I tend to love the fruity flavors. Yeah. So, but the challenge we have is that the bugs always love the fruity flavors the most too. So that's sometimes the hardest to grow. But just because something is hard, if it is a fabulous flavor, we're going to tackle and find a way through it. We have such exciting genetics coming down. It's the future looks bright, and I think that's just really the theme that I could leave your viewers with today. It's you think about what's happened in the cold winter, recognizing I'm a Canadian and I do like the winter. It has been a little longer and colder than I expected, but I think we're all feeling the southerly breeze and the warmth that is to come, and would love some more momentum.
Hearing a lot of positive things that if we get rescheduling, we're in for incredible back end of 2025. But that's obviously in the US. Look, you're in an ideal geographic area, which is BC. You're expanding, you're building quality. You've often said, and this is what's grabbed, I think, a lot of our audience's attention, is that you've stayed committed to Canada while other players have focused on the international market. So when it comes to market positioning and shelf space, give us an update. What is happening right now? Are we seeing like a subtraction of actually brands from our last conversation? What does that then mean? And what should we be paying attention to? I think not only for yourself, but when we look at other Canadian companies and Canadian brands, as like you said, a lot of the OCS has said, whoever stayed committed to obviously Canada, we're going to look at first. So what are we seeing right now that we may be missing?
We're seeing consumers for the first time walk into stores and ask for a product by brand. Okay. And that has, we're 7 years in. We're just seeing that now. There's still a long way to go. A lot of the times there's a conversation with the bud tender, but the commitment to the shelf space is very important. Look, you had Raj on. He's one of the best retailers from High Tide in the country. They run a really tight ship, and they are starting to recognize the power of brand and the consistency and trust, because they want their shoppers to come back time and time again. We want that same consumer and shopper to come back time and time again. So what you get with the power, what we've found, you get with the power of beautiful premium flower, and consistency of delivery of that beautiful premium flower is the ability to get trial on new opportunities. And that is so important when you're expanding your portfolio. So this is Marketing 101. I am not a marketeer. Fortunately, we have much smarter than people than me in the business that manage all of this and slap my fingers on the hot stove when I make a bad suggestion.
With that trial you mentioned, I mean, you just launched the all-in-one, I think, premium vapes. How are those doing in the market, and how's the response been to those products?
Well, firstly, I would say any product that gets launched within Rubicon goes through a very extensive process. We want to be best to market. We don't need to be first to market, and that's a different point of view than a lot. Early days, it's only been Ontario available in stores for about a week and a half, so it's very early for us to call it out. But we're seeing the rate of adoption very similar to the success of our vape launch from last year. I will come back in the third quarter and hopefully even before then with a bit more of an update. We're only launching with one SKU. By the end of the year, we're going to have 4 in market, and I'm very excited, and I think the product's fantastic. You know, the discreetness, the simplicity of an all-in-one product where you pick it up, you don't even have to charge the thing. You just click the button and you're ready to go out of the store. I think that's really the future of cannabis consumption. And we do some of the most beautiful, I'd like to say the most beautiful resin vapes in the country with beautiful, quality in, quality out.
When I look at record profit, and you can sit here and say, like, is this just years? Like, no success story happens overnight. And maybe for those that really look like, when I'm seeing has been some companies that have actually announced record profits this quarter, which is really nice to see in the Canadian market. Is this just a long time coming where there's just been a lot of trial and error in Canada? And now it's just, like you said, you can be good at something, but you also have to have a little bit of luck on your side too, and make sure the timing is everything. But is that kind of the stage where we're at in the Canadian market and some of the international opportunities that presents itself too?
I think a company like ours is going to be a 10-year overnight success story. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary in June. It was a really big moment. I think that we haven't changed and what our focus is hasn't changed, but we've been able to withstand the trials and tribulations of it. That hardens a team, that provides grit, resilience, and the ability to be agile in this market and take advantage of opportunity. We're going to see more of that from us. And I think that there's room in Canadian cannabis for what I would call the Arc'teryx of weed. And I think Rubicon can be that, the premium house of brands that sits in a great place. And I have to say, one of the frustrations I have is a day like today, we trade up on fantastic results. At the very end of the day, someone down ticks you and you just think, but that's the game. And we're, life's a contact sport. We're in the game. I say that often. And I think that there is so much great opportunity for Canadian cannabis and for world cannabis. We want to see the entire industry succeed. Some people don't have that view. That's fine. They don't have to. I'll have it for them because we're going to be those cheesy BC weed people, but it doesn't mean we don't want to win. And it doesn't mean we're not focused on doing what we do extremely well. And we put our weed up head to head with anyone. We're very proud of it. And I love what the industry is doing in terms of developing its genetics, new innovation, etc.
We need to have one of those. Ahead, like, what are some of the top initiatives for going into the end of the year, in the next couple of quarters, or things we should be looking out for?
So we just turned on pre-roll automation. We're very happy with that. That's going to really have benefits into our bottom line. But for us, it's turning on of the new facility. The licensing is coming imminently. There's a series of other projects. I don't like to talk about things until they're baked and I'm delivering on them. But I think there's a great future for Rubicon. The test and learn internationally is showing us and helping us learn a lot about that market without taking big bets, more of an experimental approach. And the commitment we've had to Canada, I think, is going to stand us in very good stead over the coming 3 to 5 years, and the brand reputation. So hope. My CFO wants to hook me every time I say the word hope. He said, we got to rename that facility. Nobody likes hearing a cannabis CEO talk about hope, but we're very excited and bullish because it's going to allow us to have genetics that didn't just love the greenhouse environment, hybrid greenhouse, to go into an indoor environment. And we think some of them are really going to thrive, and we're excited to see that.
Hope is a dangerous thing in business, is it not?
I was going to say, at least it's not called soon. It's better hope than soon.
So we'll have a new name. It will have a new name soon enough. But you can imagine we've actually put it out to the company for suggestions.
David Benz writes oversupply. That is the complete opposite as to what's going on in Canada right now, which you alluded to, I think, a couple of interviews before. There's actually a shortage right now, is there not?
Yeah, there is. And look, I think what we're seeing is there are a few companies that are turning on incremental capacity, but it's not at the level that is a massive threat that I'm seeing. We're not seeing net new facilities being built. A lot of facilities converted back. I think there will be, as time goes on in the international markets, an oversupply of very poor quality weed. But that's not a threat to us. That's not something that we're concerned about.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Michael Griffin writes as well. How does she feel about the trial and error that comes with turning on of a new facility? That's an interesting question.
Well, you certainly don't mess with the good one, the one that's working, while you're turning on the new one.
Right.
I have a very experienced board. I have a board that is a board for $1 billion company, and we're a $40 million company. And I'm very fortunate that they provide us with some very sage advice. And one of the pieces of advice was, Margaret, you've come out of a period of scarcity where we were in price compression until last summer. And your point of view was impacted by that. So you need to move into an investing and transformational phase of thinking. And so bring in the Marines and put the right people on the case, have this thing go well, and demonstrate you guys know what you're doing. So that's what we're doing.
And you know what you're doing, clearly. Great job, record revenue, and love to hear stories like this. And this is a great thing for, let's face it, we're at a stage now where it's nice to actually talk and interview companies that actually have their game plan together. Because I know when we first got going, it was just, you look back at some of the people that I know I interviewed 4 or 5 years ago, and I just shake my head thinking, why was I not asking different questions, or what was this all about, and what kind of selling story was this online? But we're at this stage now where a lot of people have been shaked out. And now, as you said, those that have been committed to Canada, it's great. There's other Canadian companies that have a different story, which is the international one. And
it's a great story too. Yeah, they're paving the way for us.
Yeah, it's great to see. Yeah. All in all, it's good. So then you add to that, south of the border, what's going on in the U.S. And, when I was in Germany for Mary Jane, it was just, if the U.S. could actually get something rescheduled, then Europe's going to look at this in a different light as well, and realize that they need to start fast tracking their medical markets as well. And who knows, maybe the U.S. could be the global research provider for the overall industry. And if that's the case, then that just creates more opportunities everywhere. So onwards and upwards, as we hope, and let's hope we get an announcement soon. But all in all, from a fundamental standpoint, great job on your last quarter. Okay.
Thanks. And thanks for the opportunity today, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. Mr. Tim Seymour actually just texted us and said he's going to be logging on at 4:40 to 4:50. So if you're still hanging around, I think he's going to log on here in just about 60 seconds. But we're kind of moving things around here today. We're improvising. So,
it's all good. I'm curious to see what Tim has to say. I think that'll be great.
Yeah, I agree. So anyways, let's keep in touch. Okay, Margaret?
Okay. Bye, Jens.
Thanks so much.
All right. He said he could run home, and what time was that at? That was at 4:19. Said he could be home in 15 minutes. Could throw on my camera from 4:40 to 4:50 if that helps. So let's stand by. I know Mr. Michael Bronstein is also waiting patiently, and we want to talk to him too about PA and big one this week, Texas, because everything's bigger in Texas.
Oh yeah. And Michael Griffin is correct. The Halt bill was passed to actually allow research of Schedule I drugs. But if you read into it, I think it was one of the last sections, I think Section 5 or Section 3, it still prohibits, as it relates to developing the drugs, it still prohibits the cultivation of cannabis. That's in there. I think that Halt Fentanyl Act is going to lead to public-private partnerships around psychedelics. Actually, good thing that he brought that up, because if you saw Christian this morning, Christian was talking about in the earnings report, Atai is working to become a U.S. domiciled business. You would probably want to become a U.S. domiciled business if you wanted to do public-private partnerships with government administrations as well as certain organizations within the government. So yes, I do think you are correct, but I don't think it leads to incremental research as it relates to cannabis. I think it's going to be more so focused on psychedelics and creating public-private partnerships with the VA and other organizations that are within the government.
I was just going to say that a reasoning for being of wanting to work with the VA is moving basically.
I actually read the bill. It's amazing what you can do when you actually read the bills
All right.
yourself.
Okay, let's get to it and welcome in CNBC's Fast Money host and manager of CNBS ETF, Tim Seymour. Good to see you, sir. I know you were running around, but hopefully everything's all right. How are things?
Yeah, crazy day, Shed, and thanks for having me. Anthony, great to see you.
How's it going?
And sorry I'm late, as they say.
No, all good. All good.
Late than never.
I think a lot of people just want to they understand who you are, what your name is, and what you present, obviously, the cannabis space right now. But you said last week on CNBC that you think rescheduling is a game changer. I know it doesn't answer any questions regarding to banking and these institutions getting involved, but if it is a game changer, do you see a big increase in volume with day traders? And what's the word, the feedback that you were hearing on Wall Street? Because I do think this is incremental steps, and this is one step closer to possibly getting a banking bill passed. But what is the sentiment right now? Because it seems to me that's getting a lot of attention in a lot of stories like the Wall Street Journal recently.
Yeah, look, the Wall Street community, the institutional community, as those of us that are in cannabis for a long time are aware, is largely absent. And I'm not sure, and at least all of the conversations I'm having with the couple institutional hedge funds that have been in the space, that are still in the space, also some of the broker dealers that maintain a business in the space, is that we have not seen a ton of new money here. In fact, I'm not sure we've seen any new money. But we have to be I think excited by the prospects of what does seem to be at least a change both within the industry, how it's presenting itself in Washington. We've all rallied so many times on speculation, but this does feel different, and it does feel that the answers that are coming from, or at least the insights that are coming from people in terms of the macro, less about the bottom up and the institutional interest, is different this time. And to the extent that this is something that is a game changer. It's obviously the free cash flow dynamics that we were all aware of. It's also just a dynamic that you've gotten to a place where it's when Washington and the Trump administration, with a new DEA and with a new HHS, has basically not only continued on what began under Biden, but put it pen to paper. I mean, that's the kind of follow through. And it's everything from some of the inconsistency of how can you be Schedule 1 if you're allocating in your big, beautiful bill money from Congress towards medical cannabis for veterans, all that stuff that we know. But it's been an exciting day. I think it is on some level leaves us in a place, though, that we have to be careful about being overly excited here because we've been here before.
Yeah, I hear you.
I've said that in the segment prior. When you're talking about institutions, hedge funds, family offices, private equity, I mean, you're talking about real people that run real amounts of money, that know how to diligence these companies. Have you heard any objections or any sort of insights from any of your peers into the industry? Because we are seeing some restructurings, we're seeing some leverage problems on some balance sheets. And do you see that capital, if and when it does come in, concentrate to the top and or wait for consolidation in this industry to be the time when the iron's hot to strike?
Yeah, great questions. I mean, the institutional pushback is less about, can we invest? We can invest. Are we worried about investing? Not necessarily. It's one of a couple things. The more fundamental, I would just say, headwind to investment in the sector from institutions that have been able to invest forever. Is that we still don't know what multiple this is supposed to trade at. We still don't really know what margins look like. We still see price compression. We still see an asset heavy industry because it's still until federal comes forced to be heavy. We don't, top line growth is nice, but it's not extraordinary. And therefore, I think it gets back to where do I benchmark this? Where are the peer groups? What are the comps? What multiple should I put on this? And then when I weigh it against all of the other things that really should be discounts to that multiple, where do I end up? The dynamic around balance sheets is critical, and I there's a couple really smart. They're former either colleagues of mine as in hedge fund managers or former clients of mine when I was on the sell side. I've done meetings with a bunch of folks that at least are still a couple folks that are the institutional players that are still left in this market. And in those meetings, what we've been focused on in the last 6 months has been balance sheet. And the good news for the sector is that some of the restructurings, at least that have been announced, or the ability to go to existing creditors, to find new capital, to roll out debts, to roll out maturities at reasonable cost of capital here, at reasonable interest expense, that went, I thought, largely unnoticed 2 weeks ago. I realized in the middle of when Cresco made that announcement, I thought that was incredibly bullish and positive. For a company that I think really that was the most important thing I wanted to hear. So
yeah, more runway time. Want to get to a question. You may have answered this somewhat, but the quarterly balancing into MJ has an outsized impact on some of the more illiquid underlyings. How has that methodology behind the investing and rebalancing decisions in MJ changed now that you are involved? Care to elaborate?
Good question. And one of the things I'd love to do when we have a little more time is to talk a little bit about that transition from MJ. From the former fund management team to the current team, but the former fund management team is very much intact. And let's be clear, this is an index fund, so it's passive investing, and it's based upon an index. And there have been no changes to the index other than it has allowed the fund to be more concentrated, and it has allowed the fund to take a significant position in CNBS, my actively managed cannabis ETF. And so those dynamics around rebalances are I don't think necessarily they changed. I do think that there's an element of what might go on in MJ versus what might go on in CNBS, and they are two different things. Because again, as an active manager in CNBS, I don't necessarily, let's just say in a market that we're in today, where it seems like $1 allocated is a pretty good place. Although one could argue if I'm, allocating $1 today after the type of moves we've seen in the last 6 weeks, maybe it's worth keeping a little bit more cash on the balance sheet. So MJ is it's an index. Here's what I would say about MJ and to try to be as look, my name's on that portfolio. I'm a portfolio manager. I'm a sub-advisor, and that started in January. I'm not sure that the index is perfect, and I'd like that index to see where there could be changes, and that's really all I could talk about. But my goal would be for Amplify to have two cannabis products, one that's active, one that's passive. And as far as I'm concerned, pick your poison, because active or passive are, I don't think there's any argument. You're either like to invest in active, you like to invest in passive. And I think there are benefits to each. Right now, MJ is not the passive version of CNBS. And I think CNBS, from an active management perspective, is in a great position to be able to respond to the types of headlines we're seeing out of Washington, to be responding to my own sense in meeting with companies, really how different their business is, but ultimately getting into the balance sheet, the income statement, and what multiples I think these companies should be traded. Quality of management. This is the kind of the qualitative stuff that I think a lot of the investors in the space want to have somebody managing money that really spends that kind of time on that.
Makes sense.
On another note, we've got Jackson Hole this week, and we're expecting comments from Powell. A lot of people are speculating he might drop rates a quarter point. If he does drop rates and we go into a more, let's say, risk-on environment, do you think that you could get more capital allocation to small caps, and we could be a potential beneficiary of that if that environment does materialize, or is that kind of just looking outside the box?
No, Anthony, I think it's a fair question. As much as we don't want to sit here as investors in the cannabis industry and say we're dealing with the same collection of fundamentals, both macro and the catalysts that might be drivers for the traditional sectors. There's no question that at times over the last, call
You got to run.
Well, in a second, someone's ringing off the hook, and they're going to have to wait. The catalyst for meme investing, for crypto, for the liquidity rush that we have in markets right now. Doesn't hurt cannabis. And I think there's no question that the more liquidity that is in markets, the easier it will be for investors, whoever they may be, to push out the risk curve and to push out the liquidity curve, which they're taking on in cannabis. So I don't think there's the kind of correlation you would have maybe even in traditional small caps. Obviously, the relief that the small cap sector, whether you're investing in the IWM or you're truly investing in small cap companies, the interest rate sensitivity for small caps is extraordinary. And so without handicapping the very difficult position Jerome Powell is in these days, I think that liquidity conditions for taking on risk in all markets remains very strong. And it would be actually kind of hard for an argument against cutting rates is just that. I mean, liquidity conditions and risk appetite out there is out of control. So, but cannabis would benefit.
Need to get him and Trump at a UFC event. Man, oh man, those guys don't like each other.
There's going to be one on the UFC. There's going to be one on the White House lawn come next year.
Real quick in 20 seconds, what should you be paying attention to when rescheduling is, if it is announced? Let's say an announcement happens right now. What's something that you're going to keep your eye on?
Well, it's important to understand which companies either are going to benefit the most from it, and I do think the next move might be which companies might step their foot on the gas and become a little bit more accretive or acquisition. Who's got the most powder? Who could actually go ahead and do something? I still think that combined with rescheduling, the dynamic around hemp-derived THC, the national footprint kind of a story, added to a place where some of the more, I would just say, cash, free cash flow generating, or at least those with the cash on the balance sheet, I think they're the ones that are going to be able to take advantage. And those are I think the names that should outperform, even though I know the lowest quality names with the least liquidity will gap up more. But ultimately, I think you want to buy the highest quality.
Good point. All right, sir. Best of luck to you and your Mets. Hopefully they make the playoffs, my friend.
Oh, boy. Let's do that on the next call, too. And guys, great to be here with you. And exciting times for us investing in cannabis. So
yeah, it's great.
Thanks for coming on. And I'd love to talk about CNBS and MJ and those dynamics.
Yeah. I'll reach out to you with a text tonight, and we'll set up a time maybe later this week. We have more time, okay? But I appreciate you coming on here for 10 minutes, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Tim.
Talk soon.
Yeah. Great guy. Smart guy. Georgetown grad too. So he is very intelligent. So it's great to have a resource like him. But let's keep this show going because our next guest has been waiting very patiently. It's time for Insider's Edge. Yes, after a week hiatus, he's back. Arns, cue the music. Monday afternoon, Insider's Edge, presented by the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Let's welcome back probably our most influential guest on the show. And we found out metrics-wise, our two biggest states that watch this show are Texas and PA. I wonder why. Let's welcome in the president, Michael Bronstein. How are you, sir? And I hope you had, did you have a week off last week, or were you just away on business?
No, I did. I had a week off last week.
Nice.
I enjoyed it. But I'm glad to be back here with you guys.
Yeah.
And I don't really care how the Mets are doing. Tim may be a Mets fan, but
I kind of got that. Are you a Yankees fan or are you a Phillies?
I'm a Phillies fan.
I will say this.
I feel bad for Mets fans generally, but
I'm a Tigers fan, and they went to Philadelphia 2 weeks ago for a weekend. There are 3 great games. I cannot believe the atmosphere at that ballpark. It is unbelievable. Like, it feels like an October game in like early parts of August. It looked like a lot of fun. Have you been to a game there?
Yeah, we come ready to injure people. I mean, it's that type of crowd.
Not wearing any opposing jerseys in Philadelphia, regardless of any sport. But listen, it's a big week. Everything's bigger in Texas, as they say, in Lone Star State. So we've got a deadline coming up later this week. What is the actual date? Is it Thursday? I'm just looking at my notes right here. But When we look at what we should be, like we've been talking about this SB6, and this deadline is actually indeed this Thursday. What should we be paying attention to in Texas this week? Because I know there's all eyes are going to be on what comes out of that state Senate.
So it's interesting. There are a couple things that are going on. Obviously, Democrats left the state, which dragged the initial session. Basically, put a halt on the initial session. Didn't have quorum, and the big issue that was going on was centered around redistricting. And so second session was noticed, and it was noticed with exactly the same parameters around THC that the first session was noticed. So immediately what happened is Senate considered the bill that they had been considering, which is being called a ban bill. And what we have in the House, and this is sort of what we're watching, and this is what people should be watching. People should be watching how the House deals with the bill. And anybody who says that they know what the House is going to produce doesn't, because we do not know what the House is necessarily going to come back with. It is assumed, and I assume this, that it will look something like the bill in the last session prior to it being amended. So it'll look more like a regulatory bill, but I think it's going to be more restrictive than what we've seen in the previous bills, in order to get at something that is a little bit more of a political compromise. And so I think that you're likely to see a run up in a lot of activity. And also what speakers said is they want to get this session done prior to the holiday. So we're looking in the next 2 weeks that they run through this bill. So between this week and next week, this is it.
The Senate,
I think.
The Senate votes on SB6 tonight, doesn't it? In Texas?
Yeah, I have to look at what the voting schedule is, but I think that they had just put it up.
So they want a decision made before the Labor Day weekend, which is 2 weeks from this past weekend, right?
Right. Yes. And so you have to assume by that. Now the session can go further. Someone asked if it's unusual that they have more than one special session. It happens that they have more than one special session. So there have been instances where several special sessions have been called in a row. The Texas legislature notoriously does not meet that often.
Okay.
So they have a session that lasts, every couple of years. They're coming in. So a lot of times laws that need to be changed, there's a buildup to these sessions in Texas where there's a lot of groundwork that goes on while folks are not necessarily in session. Session comes back in and they've got to run all the way through a bunch of stuff that they have to do. So they do it quick.
Yeah, how does that get handled? Because the governor is going to have a lot of pressure from the hemp industry, but you can't exactly this takes time.
Yeah, but the problem is, the problem is primarily the pressure from the hemp industry is keep it the way it is. At least from the grassroots activists that I'm seeing all over Twitter.
I get it. It's just there's a lot of people involved in the state.
There's not a lot of pragmatism coming from that side of the aisle, industry as far as the industry goes, which is a problem.
People want what they have, and the legislature doesn't want to give that. And the governor doesn't want to give that. I
don't think that's in the realm of possibility. Oh, there's Brian. Nice to see you, Brian.
That's not on the. I think that's not a political solution that's on the table, and the governor. I think also it's not necessarily clear where the governor is either, because the way that the governor has described the program to folks is that he wants a non-intoxicating program, but then gave levels of products that would in fact be intoxicating.
You can't have
I think folks are trying to figure out their way their way around that issue. And I've heard mixed signals on that.
That seems like it's just going to create more problems than solutions, to be completely honest. If you're going to do a program that's non-intoxicating, I mean, you're not giving at least the people that need the products, you're not giving them what they need.
What do you think, Michael? What are you seeing
extent.
and hearing from when we last spoke to you? Like, do you see, is it pretty tight-lipped right now? Are you hearing anything as to what direction this is going? Like, how's this, like, overall? Like, this is very contentious, right?
I think that folks don't know how it's going to end.
Yeah,
right. Because I don't think that there hasn't been clear enough direction, right? If we were sitting here and saying, all right, this is what it, this is what it should be. It's interesting because when Florida ended, you had the governor say, this is what it should be. But the thing that he said that it should be looked a lot like the bill that was in front of him that he vetoed. Okay. In this case, what we have is a Texas governor, say, all right, well, we need regulation, but there have only been a couple things that have been spelled out that are contradictory to each other with how that regulation would happen.
So what's that say? Because in some ways, it's like they haven't really listened to what the governor said back on June 22nd or whatever when he vetoed the bill. So fast forward 60 days and here we are. So what's that say? Like, what's going on behind the scenes? There must be a lot of political pressure that we're unaware of, but what's that tell you if nothing's really been done and not much has really changed with what they're proposing?
I think there's a lot of political pressure, but the political pressure is not saying the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Which is fine because people have different interests people have different interests at the table on this. Yeah. Okay. If you are arguing for a beverage and you're looking to put it under the alcohol model, that form factor under the alcohol model in Texas, which some folks are looking to do, you're going to have a different view than probably, somebody who is, than somebody who's just looking for a, for a low, low THC.
Yeah.
Product.
But that's the biggest problem. But that's the biggest problem with the state-run industry is we've never been able to have a congruent message, which is why we're here with the federal government for a lot of it. I mean, it seems like the Texas hemp industry should take some key learnings from the state-run cannabis industry, sit down, get their shit together, and get a coherent message to bring to the governor's office and get that done. Is it better or worse the more time that elapses here? For the process.
Look, I think that it's probably the time is the time that's given. Right.
I hear you.
There's that's what it is. I mean,
right or wrong way answering that.
But I didn't think that they were going to come to a second session. I thought that they were going to get this done the first time around. This kind of signifies that Abbott isn't really he's not getting things done. I mean, Texas needs a resolution as it relates to this issue, whether it's for better or for worse.
I mean, I said that once they walked out, there's the possibility for a second session. I remember saying nobody's really talking about it, but there's on this show I said it that no one's really talking about it, but there's the possibility to have that second session, and that's what that's Governor Abbott.
To sit here and say that Governor Abbott hasn't done anything, he has. He vetoed a bill. So now we've set the stage to where we're at right now. But Brian basically outlined, what was it? He spoke to the governor. Was that a comment you made? And we'll get good regulation, or we will get good regulations, or he won't sign. Whatever that means. Brian, if you got good contacts with Governor Greg Abbott, once the announcement is made, let's get him on. Actually, let's get him on now. Can you set that up, Michael? Thanks, by the way, for setting up Senator Street. That was a great interview a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I think that in Texas, again, what we're going to see is we're going to have something that's fast moving. All right. I think that it's not going to be
breath when I hear that.
Well, I don't think when we talk about, so the thing that we were conceiving about around the veto was, what did it mean? Did it mean basically an adult use hemp program?
Yeah.
Okay. That looks like the way it does now, just with sort of some level of regulation around it. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that it is less than that. How far less than that? Is it a 3 milligram THC cap that goes in? Could be. That's, he said that's where it was at, right? So, could it be, could you see some level of expansion on the other side of this? More than we've already seen to go hand. Could we see, like, there are a number of things, and I think that's that's one of the less likely probability situations that I see. But my view is like, from talking to folks, there's a disconnect between what was said in the veto, all right, the way people interpreted it, and then coming into the session, because regulation can mean a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. The jumping off point is probably where the bill was in the last session coming out of the House. I agree. They took testimony. It was a really good back and forth that they had that was in the testimony. But I've been in these situations before where you go in, okay, there's good testimony here, there's good testimony there, and the politics just kind of take over from what those things are. So, that you could be educated about it, but also where they go with it is an entirely different situation. So again, where I think this is going is we're going to see a more conservative approach to this.
Okay. Hold your breath. Like I said, it's moving quick. We'll have more detail. When should we get kind of an update or a little bit more information by, like, this Thursday, Friday? You think we'll get some feedback on how things are progressing?
Yeah. And I think all the way through next, I think you'll see that at the end of the week, and then, the beginning, next week as well. So I think that, it's going to be a run, but let's also remember, this was an important thing for the session, but when it became about redistricting, there's no more important issue to folks than what redistricting politically to folks than what redistricting was. So they have a charge to get this done, but that issue had to clear.
Right. Well, all eyes on Texas, another state we're keeping our eyes on too. Thanks again, as we said earlier, for setting up that interview with Senator Street in PA. And he had some really telling stuff to mention to us. Said if there was a vote today, he thinks actually it would go through. That a lot of Republicans within the state Senate, as you said before, are pivoting and changing their outlook. And I know this is nothing to do with Pennsylvania, but you can't help but think, if there is a rescheduling announcement in the next couple of weeks, what kind of impact that's going to have. Because Anthony had a great tweet that was pushed out last week that if we could get rescheduling, if we could get VA to basically flip to adult use along with PA, that would be of course, it would be a huge back end to 2025. But these are real viable opportunities that could take place in this cannabis space over these next couple of months. But as it stands now, from what we're hearing and seeing, budget negotiations have stalled. So I don't necessarily view that as a bad thing, especially if rescheduling does indeed happen, and how that could actually speed things up. Do you not think?
I don't see it as a bad thing either. It's just a thing that you have to take into account with Pennsylvania. Okay. So the budget negotiations have stalled over the weekend. There's been more discussion about doing a trade for skill games, and that was sort of making the news around the state, and also transportation funding, which Senator Street has argued we should legalize marijuana in order to help the transportation situation in the state. That is something that he's been making a very clear argument about in public, but also privately. Okay. And the state is, the state doesn't have the money right now, and they need a revenue source. So, conversations are ongoing. I also think that Republicans understand that legalization is going to have to happen. You know, whether it be, and remember, Pennsylvania is a full-time legislature. It's not like Texas where, folks take a flyer and they show up. Pennsylvania is a full-time legislature throughout the year. So that this is not this is a situation where if the budget is kind of stalling, right, they're going to be back in session in September, right? Mm-hmm. They're there September, October, November, right? Like they're going, right? So there's more than one bite at the apple. And there are a lot of different ways that Pennsylvania could do this. So, the question is, how does the budget close? And I think that that's going to answer a lot of the questions about what comes next. If the budget closes with marijuana in it, well, then there's your answer.
Okay.
If the budget doesn't close with marijuana in it, it's how those budget conversations are left. Is there something on the table where Republicans are like, you know what, we're okay with dealing with this right in, as right after. We're okay with this, happening. Democrats wanted to be part of the budget, right? They passed a bill to put it in the budget. The governor has called for it to be in a budget.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of pressure in the state with Delaware just coming online.
Yeah.
There are numbers that are coming out of Ohio that people are seeing on this. So the pressure continues to build continues to build on the state. If there's a rescheduling announcement, I think that really does change the dynamics, the underlying dynamics.
Delaware, it's connected to PA.
Yeah, we tried not to. The canal's a little low in Delaware, but it is in fact connected to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Virginia too. Like you look at the gubernatorial race that's going on, and it looks like a clear winner for why am I drawing a blank? Her name, Abigail. And we were actually asking a few people over at Jushi because they got their ear to the ground over there and said, yeah, like adult use will flip really soon after she is actually appointed. So you have all these neighboring states. But when we look at skill gaming, what do we, as far as the budget, what was that supposed to produce in the budget if that were to pass on an annual basis? Do you know off the top of your head? Like
$386 million, according to the governor.
So when you combine that with cannabis, because they're losing out on how many hundreds of millions of dollars with regards to,
I think 350 is the windfall or the shortcoming.
They're short that. And then I actually think the numbers that they're producing for skill games are probably lower than they're likely to see, depending on how they regulate them and how they tax them. So the numbers that we have for adult use that were done by Responsible PA, and they were released publicly, which is the campaign in Pennsylvania, was a little over $420 million of it. Yeah, well, that's what they came out to. But it was
the guy saying he's watching at 2x speed. That's got to be funny considering how fast we talk.
Again, watching at a 2-speed to catch up after another interruption. Shad is like Jesus. All right, guess I'll shut up.
You're good.
Long story short, what do you think, as far as PA and the way the progress is being made? And really, what is, I guess, some of the main roles that you're playing right now to bring this to light across the finish line? Like, what role are you playing right now, Michael?
Supporting the campaign, for sure, to get this across the finish line, helping provide leadership, to get folks together, to be able to influence everybody who needs to be influenced on the ground, to be able to move this.
Yeah.
Working on stakeholder engagement inside the state, because here's the thing: like, you could talk about operators who are surely doing their fair share to put stuff across the finish line, but something like this can't be done alone. There has to be real community support. It's reaching out to the regular business community in Pennsylvania. It's reaching out to activist groups in Pennsylvania. It's having people call their elected officials and getting them to meet with them as well, and create pressure, and then getting people who aren't necessarily, you wouldn't think that they're for it, coming out publicly for it and putting their names on the record. So there's been a lot of editorials in the state. We've even seen Mike Tyson tweet about it. In the state, and just trying to gin up general awareness, and just really building an army of folks to be able to get the support that's needed, so that people can't can't ignore the issue. And I do feel that in Pennsylvania, that's what's happened over the course of the last year, and there's even more that's going on right now. So it's really tough. I mean, if the state is going through a tough financial situation, this is like one of the 2 revenue items that can actually be done.
Makes
that
sense.
The general public wants to see done.
Yeah. Well, to the original point, and you touched on it, rescheduling gets announced. I think it changes. I think this is a great example as to how we could start to see people look at this in a different light. We're also seeing the same kind of pressure with Governor Mike Braun out of Indiana, that if rescheduling gets announced, we're seeing pressure from there too. Have you paid much attention as to what's going on over there?
Yeah. And we've done on Indiana, we've spent a lot of time in Indiana. We spent time. There was also some hemp legislation that was going on in Indiana, and so on the Indiana front, it doesn't surprise me that's what he said. I would also say privately, meeting with Republicans and even some conservative Democrats. This cuts across party lines. Not all Democrats are for legalization. And there are definitely folks that behind closed doors, when you talk to folks, and I'll just say mostly Republicans who are not there yet on it, they think that a rescheduling announcement or some action federally like that would help get them there. And I think that once a rescheduling action happens, or there's even more of an announcement, I mean, I'll tell you even with Trump saying that he was considering it, we went around, we sent that information basically to all these different states, and said to local stakeholders and elected officials, look at what the president is considering here, right? Pay attention, because the ground under you is shaking. Okay. And there's no shame if when the president says what he's going to say, that you join him in this. So I think it's a watershed moment. It's one of those things where we are, there will be a before and an after moment on this, and this news will be mainstream news.
Do you think in any way, and I know I'm speculating here, that there's any truth to like what's going on in Texas and how this could be delayed a little bit based on a potential announcement being made in Washington and how this might be looked at? I know it's kind of two separate issues, and this is about a lot of the synthetic hemp as to what's going on in the state of Texas, but there has to be some sort of play or some sort of domino effect that comes out of Washington pertaining to the outcome as to what takes place there. Is it not?
Yeah. I mean, I think it remains to be seen around that conversation.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of things that are going on federally too. I mean, you've got the discussion around, the redefinition of hemp that's in there too. And then also with rescheduling, it's also going to depend too, I think, what the rule says relative to that issue. But I do think that the groundswell, if we play it right, and I think we do have to play it right, because we can't let the argument that, like people can't get complacent about this. This has to be seen as the historical step, not the full step that we want, not the end step, right? But one of the first steps. And a very important first step at that. And the underlying politics of the industry have changed over time too. Some of the things that we would have argued at the beginning of the industry are not that persuasive to folks politically right now, just either because change of control of Congress. Okay, so it's not the same. Some of the arguments that are being made right now are not the same that would have been made 5 years ago or 10 years ago around this issue.
Two questions I want to ask before I let you run. What is the history of PA running at a deficit, right, Squap? It's a good question. Do we know?
So PA, so they're not going to be running at they're not going to be running at a deficit.
Except the rainy day fund.
Rainy day funds. Yeah. And that's complicating the conversation, because folks are saying, well, why don't we just use, why don't we use rainy day funds, which everybody knows will be dried up to have to plug basically everything that's going on federally. If people are expecting the same services, I think that there's wide acknowledgement between Democrats and Republicans that those funds are not going to last, but they certainly could be plugged in. So the history is that folks aren't going to want to do it. It's not this isn't the federal government. There isn't a credit card that can be done. It's either you're raising taxes or you're doing something else. And I don't think that folks are interested in raising taxes.
Yeah. Last question. Brian Dombrowski writes, Michael, federally, what's your thoughts on the CJS? The House and the Senate are not aligned, and if it doesn't get through by September 30th, the federal protections will not be reinstated. Care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, from the conversations that I've had, I think that we're going to be okay in terms of getting the federal protections in, even without that alignment. I was certainly concerned about it and some of the movement, but then having more conversations about it and what it meant, I do think that the protections, and we're certainly advocating for the protections, will remain in place. But it's certainly one of the things I think that we have to know is that we can't rest on our laurels here, and that the industry and the regulation around it are probably more fragile than any of us would like to admit.
Yeah.
We exist in a place that is a tough place to exist from a regulatory perspective, and the certainty is needed. So these things are going to have to be fought for. That's a great point.
All right. Well said. Good catching up with you. And it looks like it's about that time of year, end of summer. And well, you know what? Everybody's all rested and back, but we should be in for a couple of busy weeks, both on the state and federal level. But it's good to see something to talk about and really why we're here. So let's stay connected. And more importantly, we'll see you back here next Monday. Okay, sir?
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate your time. Good to have him back. And just a reminder to everybody that, yes, Senator Street that was on with us 2 weeks ago to talk about the adult use progression in PA, that was all set up by Michael Bronstein and team at Attach, which was Insider's Edge, presented by the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Great guy. And seen a lot of words Scooby-Doo in our comment section here today. Scooby. I think that's a wrap. We're at an hour and 21 minutes. This might be our longest live stream yet, but we did it. We improvised in the first 20 minutes. Margaret came on. Good takeaway. She loves her quality, and she really pounded that home. Tim came on, had some telling stuff. We'll get more in depth with his ETF, CNBS, and MJ, hopefully later this week. So we'll keep you posted if we can set up a follow-up interview with Tim. And then Michael just given some really interesting conservative outcome approaches that he thinks going to happen in Texas as well as PA. And really what's going on how it's not necessarily a bad thing that budget negotiations have been stalled. And in the event that there is a rescheduling announcement, that will have a big effect on a lot of the lawmakers when it comes to this decision that could be made for adult use in PA. So all eyes on a number of things right now, but all in all, should be a good week. So anything else you want to add? You good?
I'm good. I'm all talked out after hour and 25 minutes.
It's a long one. All right, everybody. Thanks. We'll see you back here Wednesday at 4 o'clock. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks for checking in. Leave your comments below. Any feedback, anything we missed, let us know. This is the latest Trade of Black podcast presented by Dutchie. For Anthony, I'm Shad. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you back here Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
So what'd you think of all that information? Some interesting stuff that we just learned once again here at the TDR Trade of Black podcast. Let's keep the conversation going. So leave your comments below. We'd love to get your feedback. As usual, if you have time, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications. And stay connected with us here at the Trade to Black podcast. Thanks for watching, everyone.